Hey everyone, this is Daisy. Welcome to today's episode. Wanted to hop on here before the episode starts because in this episode, you're about to hear me go through a major anxiety spiral that had no bearing in reality. It was truly just my perception that was forming my reality. And I've since came out of the spiral that I was in this episode. And it was really funny to listen to this episode and also in a way inspiring because it really shows you that you are the one that is making your own reality. So if you don't like it, you can change it. Obviously, you hear me talk through everything in this episode, and that happens, and that helps. And I do mention in this episode that, I didn't need to cry, but I had a nice long cry after this. So sometimes talking through your emotions and crying afterwards helps you change your perception of how you're viewing things, which ultimately changes your reality. So with that in mind, enjoy this episode, and I will let you be the judge of it.
Hey, and welcome back to Life Unpotted. Thanks for joining us today for another episode. This is Sophie here. We are recording live from Austin, Texas. If you've been following, you know we moved here 2 weeks ago as of the date of this episode. And let me tell you, moving to a new city is not easy. I have personally not experienced so many racing thoughts probably in over a year at this point. So it's been a difficult journey so far. But as I start to come out of it and as I start to have time now that it's been 2 weeks to reflect on everything that's been happening, I'm starting to realize that this is just kind of part of the process, feeling all these insecurities, feeling all these doubts, questioning everything. And sometimes I think change really surfaces a lot of stuff that's just been deep within us, that lies deep within our subconscious mind that we're not always in touch with. So yeah, I think today's episode, we're going to go through the past week or so, what's been going on in our mind and the insights we've been having, but also the anxiety that we've been having. As always, thank you for joining us. And if you have not yet, please review, rate, follow us on Instagram. Your support really, really makes a difference. We are building this community and this podcast means so much to us. So your support also means so much to us. All right, so let's get started. Daisy, how have you been processing everything the past few weeks?
So I'm feeling very resistant to even wanting to podcast right now because I think with the past 2 weeks, we moved 2 weeks from today when this episode will come out, and you're just getting your bases down. For us, we were getting a car, we were getting our apartment set up, we just got our couch this past weekend. I think just truly having your home set up at all, making sure you walk in, you have things so you're not just putting everything on the floor. I think just the process of moving and not knowing what you're doing. And for me, starting nannying and looking for other part-time jobs, I think it's a lot to do. I think it's a lot to change. And I think a ton of judgments can come up, especially as you're in a new area, you're meeting new people. You're comparing to, well, what are they doing? Oh, they just bought a house. Oh, they're super steady in their career. They're going on a European trip. They must have a lot of money saved to be able to do that. And it feels like in a way we're totally starting over. And I think also with moving, it's super easy, going back to what I was saying, when you redirect your focus to your basic needs getting met of making sure you have your home set up and learning the local area, I think it's easy to get disconnected from yourself. And I think I've definitely gotten disconnected from myself. And basically this whole move was prompted by me being connected with myself and knowing what my why was and being connected to that. And it's an interesting experience to move here, to be thrown off course and to really be questioning everything that you're doing and judging yourself, and seeing how other people live their lives doesn't help that. Because when you're disconnected from yourself, anything that's shiny looks attractive or appealing. Anything that sounds in the slightest appealing, you think you should be doing that. I think these are all things that are based out of you not being connected with yourself, because then you can't be connected with what you really know that you want. And I think that's just where I'm at. And I think that I know that this will pass. I think, this is kind of funny, but we just got our couch. And I think that helps. You have a place to sit that's not in the bed. It can be depressing to have the only place in your apartment to sit that's not on the floor on the bed. And I don't know, maybe this sounds very first worldy in regards to comforts within an apartment, but maybe it's not. I don't know. I just don't really know, I think, at all anymore. And I think that's probably a good place to get back to, because I think that when you're in a move, it's so easy to look to certainty, which again, going back to why I moved here is because we realized that certainty doesn't exist. But moving to a place, getting sick the first week that you're there. If our voices are hoarse, that's kind of why. But it also just shows the stress we put ourselves through moving. And like Sophie said, like we haven't done this in a very long time. And I know it's all part of the experience, but I think it's so easy to lose sight of what matters to you and to start focusing on things that don't matter when you're disconnected from yourself. Because isn't that the truth? I feel like so many years of my life, I would look to material items, I would look for fun, drinking, all of these things, because I didn't have the basic ability to connect with myself. And I think I'm kind of seeing that reappear, moving to a new place. The last time I moved to a new place, I was 22 years old, which was New York. And I've changed a lot since then. What I care about has changed a lot since then. But I think it's super easy to want to regress, because if you're regressing, then you're going towards something that's already been. So you're going towards comfort. I think it's a super complex, nuanced experience. And if anyone else is going through a move or a life transition, then hey, you're not alone, because it is hard. And I think that this is just part of the process. Being 2 weeks into living somewhere is an interesting place to be, because you're not quite settled in and you're just starting to get settled in, but in the process of getting settled in, it's super easy to lose sight of your life, especially when you're not working a corporate job that keeps you within the constraints of the hours that you need to be. There's a sense of familiarity there. So I'm just saying that a lot of change at once can be overwhelming. I mean, there's certainly been upsides and positives to this, but I can let you chime in, Soph. I've been chatting for a minute, but I think all in all, I'm just trying to reconnect with myself. Maybe this episode will help, because I think the solution may be within that, to feeling better and to being reconnected. Maybe it can be in this episode. We'll see.
Well, I think it just sounds like you're going through it right now, which I think is interesting for me to watch you go through it, because I have been going through it, but it's always interesting when you have clarity and then you are seeing somebody else go through it, because it doesn't even matter. Like when you're caught up in your mind and your emotions, it's just so hard. Like it's just hard. And I just think that's kind of where you're at right now. And that's okay. Like I think clearly, like what you were just saying, Daisy, about like reflecting on all this, like there's a lot of focus on like that hyperfixation that comes with everything that's happening. It sounds like every day it's like an analyzing of like, oh, day 2, day 3, like so focused on what is going on that I think you get so caught up in mental agony, because you're not really, it's hard to experience something when you're so new to a place and we're not quite immersed yet. So I think that naturally is going to bring up so many of our habitual ways of thinking, like getting nervous and getting anxious and doubting everything. And what you were saying to me earlier today was like you're comparing yourself a lot to, or maybe feeling insecure to tell people you have a nanny job, or feeling insecure that you are working these side jobs to pursue a different life. And I think this is a real thing, and I think it's something to talk about, because I think a lot of the reason why we don't end up switching our life is because we are caught up in prestige. Like we are caught up in thinking that prestige is what's gonna make us happy, and we have both been there before, but that doesn't mean it's not gonna come back up. And it's also like literally like you're looking at like a shiny object, right? You're looking at a trip to Italy or these extravagant ways of living, and it's so interesting, especially when you achieve that all at such, like when you achieve so much wealth at such a young age, it's like, okay, you're 30 years old and you have a Range Rover already. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's kind of like for people whose life path does not involve making a lot of money in their younger years, you got to think of it as like a short-term sacrifice, to saying, hey, I'm going to take 5 years when I'm 28 years old or 23 years old or 35 years old to figure it out. Because otherwise, like you're just going to keep going down that path on autopilot. So I think it's really interesting to see you start to like judge yourself, because clearly you're getting caught up in the system, and you're clearly getting caught up in the matrix, and you're getting caught up in this concept that wants you to believe that you will be happier if you are doing all those nice things and had all those nice things. So I'm curious to hear like from you, like, why do you think it makes you insecure to say you have a part-time nanny job?
I don't feel insecure saying that. I think I feel more so since I feel disconnected from, I don't really know what I'm doing right now. Like we're recording once a week for this episode, but I don't feel super connected because my full-time job has felt like getting settled in a new city. So it's more so I've had moments where I'm like, oh, I love that I'm doing this and this is super exciting, but it's like, I think you get to a point where you forget why you left your job. You forget why you're taking these part-time jobs to pay the bills. When you aren't connected to that why, it feels really difficult to feel excited, like there's something beyond what's happening right now. And I don't think there has to be an answer. I think you can figure it out along the way, but I think I'm just in a moment right now where it feels very difficult to do that. Like it feels incredibly uncomfortable. It feels like I'm going towards a dead end path. It feels like what I'm doing right now will be what I'm doing forever. I will always be struggling to figure out, okay, how am I going to make sure all my expenses are paid? Because no one wants to do that forever. But I think it's more, I don't feel like anything's lighting me up right now. And I fully recognize that this moment I have right now, this feeling I have in this moment, I certainly have felt that at full-time jobs that I've been in. It goes beyond that. But I just think that it's quite confusing to make all of these decisions, take an action on these decisions, and then when you make the decisions, they don't land right away.
Why do you think it's so hard to recognize that this is all temporary? Like, do you think it's our desire to want to know? Like, I personally think I'm spending way too much time to the listeners. Like, I've been going through this shit too. Like, I've really been second guessing everything, and I come in and out of it of not even second guessing my decision, but more so just extreme. Like, I've been feeling so like racing thoughts like I have not felt in so long. Like, my mind just won't stop. And I think I had a realization today when I was meditating of just like, I need to stop trying to change this. Like, I need to accept that right now I'm going through change, and right now I'm going through a lot. And I think it's really hard to see ourselves in life. Like, it's really hard, for example, for us to see that we have done massive changes in the past few months. And I think now that we're here, it's like there's nothing, we're starting to have things reflect back to us. Like, we're meeting new people, you know, time is passing. It's been literally not even 2 weeks as we're recording this episode. So it's kind of hilarious that we're even having thoughts of like, oh, do we miss New York yet? Like, oh, do we want to, like, it's just like, you can't become a lawyer 2 weeks into law school. There's so much pressure that we put on needing things to like pan out right away. And I think that's where the mental agony comes, because you're looking around and you're like, why am I not seeing what I want? And it's like, because you just started, like, we just started taking this risk and we're just now here. So I think what's on my mind now is like giving yourself compassion to understand that it takes time. And I think this is why people don't do this, because you have to sit in a level of uncertainty for what may feel like a long time. And I think in those moments, what really matters is knowing, even if you can't pinpoint what you want, knowing what you don't want. I think for you, Daisy, like, that was pretty clear why you left. Like, you didn't want that. And I think sometimes it takes some time to figure out what it is that we want.
So to answer the question you initially asked of why is it so hard to see what is beyond right now? Why is it so hard to recognize that there's something beyond what's happening right now? And I would say it's like the same reason of why it's so uncomfortable to be in an apartment where the only piece of furniture is a bed and there's no couch, because it's uncomfortable. Like, what you want to do is sit down somewhere and feel held, to feel comforted. And having that for 2 weeks without a couch, it gets uncomfortable. All you want is that couch. So I think when you're focused on what you don't have and realizing that's exactly what you want, well, it's really difficult to then be in a position where you don't even know what it is you want anymore, and you start seeing these shiny things that seemingly are making other people happy, but you're not even sure what you're doing, but you feel like you've regressed, took a step backwards compared to what you're seeing. That's obviously based off like what your perception is right now, based off what your mental state is. But when I think you go through a big transition, like moving somewhere, uprooting your life, I think you don't process it until like weeks to come after. And then in that same time, if your mental state is still struggling, say for us, we got sick and we were not really doing anything, it all compounds and everything starts to feel really intense or really hit or miss or life or death of, wow, I don't have any of that. Where is my life going? Oh, I'm living in an apartment. Oh, these things where you start to see we're no longer in New York City. Not everyone lives in apartments. Like, you start to get fixated on these little things that don't matter because you're focused on just feeling better. So anything will do. Their solutions are endless when you're in a state that you're unsure.
And I've had these thoughts too, is like so desperate to have the apartment look complete. Is it because like we are so desperately looking for comfort? Like we're so desperately looking for something to make us feel better? Like I've seen it with you. Like I need the couch to come. You've said that. Like, I need it. Couldn't you have a world where your mental stability, where you were seeing clearly that it didn't matter what your apartment looked like? If you were sleeping on the floor, like wouldn't that not matter? Like don't you think these things really just reflect where you're at? It's all your mind creating this agony. I think we start to forget that it's because I don't have the couch, right? That's why I'm uncomfortable. And it's like, is it though? Like, I understand what you're saying, Daisy. Like, I understand it because I've had the same thoughts, but I've also had the thoughts of like, why can't we just acknowledge that maybe this is hard? Like, why does it have to be that, oh, we need the couch to come? Like, do you get what I'm trying to say? Of just being like, is it really that? Or are we not seeing how deep it really is?
No, I get what you're saying. It's the mental manifestations coming out of what the mind currently looks like. Like, yeah, of course, you know, like we have our basic needs met. We have a roof over our head. Like, I get what.
Well, when you're saying basic needs, I kind of was like food, shelter, water. Yeah. So is your basic need a couch? I'm not trying to push you to be mean. I'm just trying to like really understand like the fact that you're saying that's your basic need. What do you think that reflects about where you're at right now?
Yeah, I don't like what you're saying, but I really don't. But I mean, I see the truth in it, and I do think it's true. It is a reflection of where I'm at mentally, and it is seeking comfort. And yeah, I mean, it's just the reality of it.
I feel like when we met 3 years ago, I remember you specifically like started to work on like connecting with yourself a lot more than you had been, and you were like always super anxious and dealing with a lot of like just feeling like really overwhelmed. And I feel like this move is really bringing all that up. It's just interesting, like we can go from spending 3 years working on healing and having inner work, and then you go through something so drastic like relocating and leaving jobs and leaving everything you know. It's like you're swimming in this rapid water, and it's like, I thought I already learned how to swim. I think it can be really hard.
Well, I think it's interesting because when I hear you say drastic, I roll my eyes at myself because I'm like, oh, like you've moved states before. It's not a big deal. You've moved jobs before. It's not a big deal. Like, it's hard for me to give any remnants of compassion towards that because there's people who deal with much more difficult things. Like, it's in the grand scheme of things, it's not a big deal.
But
like, why am I? No, don't interrupt me.
But I just think it is a big deal. Like,
I'm just telling you where my mindset is at right now is that I can't give myself any sort of compassion because this doesn't have to be directed at me. I'm aware that my mindset is not good right now. So I'm just speaking about it in third pretense because, yeah, I know it's ridiculous, but it's like, yeah, it's not a big deal. Like, just move, just leave the job, like, just do it, move on. Like, you have your basic needs met. Why can't you just do it and move on? Like, that's my mentality.
That's really interesting because I think it is really easy in these moments to compare ourselves. Like, we do have shelter over our heads. We do have this. We just got a car. Like, think about how many people who don't have that. But doesn't mean when you're experiencing isn't valid. Like, it doesn't mean that you have literally stripped away a giant identity that you've clung to your whole life of who you thought you are. Like, these things have manifested. These changes have manifested through our actions, like moving, right? But you could move to a new city and still not be stripping back so much of who you thought you are. Like, that's what this is, though. Like, this isn't just moving. Like, that is how it's categorized because it's hard to explain that, like, 3 years ago, we're a much different person. And this past few years have been you literally ripping that away and saying, wait a minute, I'm not that. I don't want that. I don't want to live that life. I don't want to be somebody who constantly is anxious and constantly feels overwhelmed and constantly is in my thoughts. I don't want to be somebody who's so tied to thinking my worth comes from where I work and how much money I make. And those are really hard things to unlearn. So if there's anything I'm taking from this episode right now, it's just like, even if you're 22 years old or 28 or 35, unlearning what you have learned your whole life and changing that is extremely, extremely difficult.
Okay, but that's the exact place I want to go back to, where I think life is so simple and so easy when You do just have a job, you're working, and you're getting that paycheck because life is simple. You have the clear path laid out in front of you. You save up, you get a house, you start a family, things are comfortable, and you have time to focus on yourself. But obviously it's not always the case. It's always a direct reflection of what your internal world is how you actually feel. And I know from past experience that living in a shallow place, making all of your decisions based off of cheap thrills, material items, feeling good, having fun, it doesn't lead to a desirable place. And I think it's really easy to move to a new city where you do see a bunch of young people, a bunch of successful people. I mentioned in the last episode, like there's a lot of tech companies in Austin. You see people who are making really good money at a young age and doing all these fun things. And it's interesting because I know that that's not the life that I want. But I think since I'm in such a place of discomfort right now, I'm clinging to that because that guarantees certainty. And I don't want certainty, but I think it's interesting about moving to Austin in particular. And maybe this is true and just a fact, or maybe this is just like my perception of the city we've moved to, but feels like there is like a trajectory here. And a lot of people are on that trajectory, or as our new friend said, who Brooke, it's the script. It seems like a lot of people are on the script, or maybe that's just what's heightened to me because that's what I'm looking to find certainty in. I'm not sure, but it's interesting because it's not like we left New York to move to Bali, Indonesia. It's not like we went somewhere that has a totally different culture, a totally different way of life. It's like we went to the South, and obviously Austin is way different than Texas, but I think that things bleed over. So I think that's like it's an extra big challenge. While that's true, I think there is a lot of innovation and entrepreneurship here. Yes, that's absolutely true. But these are just thoughts that I'm working through.
It's so funny because I just see it so clearly right now. Is that it's like you're being a condescending bitch? Is that what you're thinking?
Maybe earlier, but not anymore. Okay. No, I know there's truth to it. It's just I can hold the idea that there's truth in what you're saying, but it's like, shut up. I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I don't want to. Yeah, I think when you know that you're struggling, it takes a certain level to open up and be like, okay, I'm okay. Hear this right now.
I'm like, God damn, you're right. Stop being so right. And I know that you're right because it sucks. I just want to be in my misery. You want to soak in your misery.
Yes. Of course.
But I can't do that.
Because you think it feels good though,
but
right?
I know it doesn't.
But it's just like, it's interesting because your mind, it's that same thing of with me battling my internalized homophobia, right? I'm like, all of a sudden, no one's looking at me holding my girlfriend's hand anymore. It's like, no, you dumbass. You're just comfortable with yourself now. I'm sorry to sound like Hector, dumbass. But it's just like your mind is now projecting and looking like, all you're seeing is people tech. And I honestly have not even really seen that many tech people. If anything, I'm like, wow, people are kayak instructors here. People are working different jobs. People are so laid back here. People are not wearing the suits that I've even seen. Like there's so many other ways it feels like here versus New York City to live. And we always forget that like our reality is literally a reflection of our mindset. So when you are thinking and focusing on a certain thing, you're going to start seeing that in your reality more. So if you're so hyper fixated of thinking that, oh, everyone here is going down that path, like I'm not going on that path, you're going to see that. But I can guarantee you that I'm going to hear it come out of your mouth probably in some point on this journey of, wow, like there's so many people here who are taking that same risk as me. It's just like your mind can't see that yet because you are probably hyper focused on validating, wanting to confirm a belief of ours. So since you are doubting yourself so much, and since you're doubting yourself so much of thinking you're this loser who's going down this path of nannying at 28 years old, your mind now wants to confirm that because what? That gives you certainty. So at least you can now go out there and go, right, I am right. I am a loser. Because guess what? Tech guy, Tesla, so many nice cars, right? Because you want that to confirm to yourself something. And when you really, really dig deep, you know that all your mind wants right now is something to cling to for certainty. It's the same way of when we're really scared about something, I'm going to start getting so convinced that things are going to go wrong. That things are going wrong right now. Why? Because what's the alternative? Sitting in the fact that you actually don't know. And that's the thing though. You never know how things are going. We never know. If you're driving that Tesla and going to your 6-figure job, do you know what's happening right now? Do you know when you're going to die? Do you know what is it going on in this magical, beautiful existence called life? You're clinging to something to give you that sense of stability, but stability doesn't exist at all. And what we're in right now, and what I realized from moving, it's like, I realized like there is no purpose to life. You have to create your own purpose in life. Like there is no purpose. I see that so clearly because nothing around me anymore reflects my version of myself anymore. Nothing around me reflects my purpose. And I'm just like, holy shit, well, that sucks. Well, also, isn't that exciting? Because now I can create my own purpose. So it's so interesting to just watch you go through this, as am I. So I'm not trying to sound like, I mean, I know anything better than you, but you're in the hot seat today. And I've been in the hot seat too. Don't worry. Of just like our mind will go through so many rabbit holes looking for that answer, looking for that answer. But what if the answer is just like, I just don't know? And that's okay. Did any of that resonate?
Ugh.
Expected answer.
Yeah, I mean, it did, unfortunately. And it's tough. You had me until you said life is purposeless, and that pissed me off. Again, I get it's true, but it put pressure on me that I had to create purpose. And I'm like, I don't know what the fuck I want right now. So how do I create that? And I recognize that you don't have to be doing anything. You can literally just create purpose by walking out on your patio and enjoying the moment. Like, I think it can be this whole pressure cooker that you have to go out there and create something and be ultra successful. And it's like, for what? Really, just what do you want on a day-to-day basis?
I think the point I was trying to say by saying there is no purpose in life is the fact that like inherently life is empty of purpose. So you get to create it. So that takes a lot of pressure off of you of like, what if my purpose is just to be present in everyday life? Like what if my purpose is just to wake up every day and smell the trees or appreciate the fact that my heart is beating, which is so hard to understand, or the fact that you're alive. Like this is where it's just like our minds take so much for granted. Like we are alive right now, yet we are so consumed by our fears. And I think this is a clear example of like our minds will never be satisfied no matter what. And it's a clear example of knowing that like that isn't you.
I mean, yeah, I'm totally aware that everything I'm saying is bullshit. Everything that I'm thinking about is bullshit. But it's like, how do you end it? You just don't feed it. But that feels so difficult because there has to be a level of compassion to it as well. I mean, I've gone up and down. I haven't felt this way the past full 2 weeks. It's more so been the past few days, this weekend more so. And probably because we had a cold and like we're bedridden. And I think that can really do the trick of getting you in your head and making you feel lost. But this book, The Surrender Experiment, he doesn't know. He doesn't know what's going to happen. Basically, he writes the book of when he's like later in life, recounting his early life to how it got him to where he is, and basically just surrendered, for lack of better terms, to what was happening, saying life knows what's best for me and not I don't know what's best for me, and actively saying, yes, I'll do that, when his internal dialogue was, I hate that, I don't want to do that, because he was very aware that he didn't want this idea in his head to control his life, because this voice is controlling me right now, and it is getting in the way of me having a perfectly great Sunday evening. This voice gets in the way of you having a perfectly great Sunday evening because you're afraid of what's happening tomorrow, because you have Sunday scaries. Obviously, that's a very simple blanket statement to say, and it's an annoying statement to hear because it's not telling you how to do it. I think this book is so great because he walks you through proof of concept of what he means by it. So if you are curious about that, you should check it out. Going back to what I was saying, it's really hard to actually act on that. But I think it is really, really helpful to recognize that if you don't get control of this voice in your head, and by that I mean letting it silence, if you let it get you angry about every little incident, or if it makes you insecure, you're guaranteed to miss out on 100% of the opportunities that are in front of you because you are getting in your own way. When people say that, it's because it's referring to the voice in your head that's getting in your own way. It's getting in your way. And I'm recognizing that because I think when you're in my position right now, what you want to do is sulk, go sit on our couch and find comfort in that, and feel sad and bad for myself. And you know what that will do? That'll continue to keep me in this same state And yeah, sometimes you need to like emotionally release. And I think I maybe could have cried from this, but I don't know that that was necessarily the best route, because I think a lot of the times it's not as deep as we make it out to be. And we just need to tell the voice to shut the fuck up, and not so aggressively all the times, but through a conversation like this, me having a lot of will to not respond in anger towards the facts you were saying, reminding me about these things. I patiently listened and felt extreme discomfort. Probably didn't look too appealing either. I was able to come back to life a little bit because I was able to quiet that voice and say, you know what? I think I will go out on a limb and say, I think almost always when we don't feel good, it's because we're listening to that voice. I would say 100% of the time when we don't feel good, it's because we're taking that voice as matter of fact. And it's a hard voice to escape.
And how we recognize that we're not that voice, because I think when you're in an anxious thought spiral, it can be really hard to understand that, is like when I'm talking right now, I'm not thinking. When you're doing those things in flow state, when you're not hyper fixated, and it's like, I think it's surrender experiment where it's like, we're so used to using our mind for 100% of things. It's just like we don't have to always using the logical mind. We don't have to think through things. And you're probably we're gonna be 80 years old and the mind's still gonna be telling. Like Hector said, when in that episode, Hector Marcel, our guest from 2 weeks ago, said, I still wake up with insecurities. Like as long as we're alive, like the voice is never gonna silence. Like we're always gonna have the thoughts. It's about recognizing though, that's not you. And they're not true. And they could be telling you, hey, you're a stupid loser, but guess what? That's not you. And maybe that's a reflection of something that happened to you when you were 23 years ago. Or maybe that's just our synapses firing and there's no rhyme or reason to it. Maybe that's just our monkey mind from our ancestors because they had to go find their food. Like we're a human being. Like we have a brain that's come from evolution. So it's like this brain has been through so many years of evolution. Like it's the anxiety of your ancestors and ancestors. So that might not go away ever.
Well, going back to what I was saying, the nonsense I was saying earlier about how since moving here, it's very difficult to pursue whatever I want to pursue, whatever the hell that is, because I see so many people living the script of having a high successful tech job. Going back to that specific example, this is where I think it's like it takes people maybe years to get to this point of realizing that material items won't make you happy. And I think it's ultra easy to think that they will when you're in a place where you don't have them. And I think that I quote unquote feel like I'm in a place right now where I don't have that upward mobility of financial success that's guaranteed. I think that that is the exact reason why it sounds so appealing. And I understand why people set out to make it their life mission to make a lot of money, because when you don't have that, you want it. I think there's another frame of thought that once you realize that you can have a comfortable life and have time for yourself, maybe that's when you're able to recognize that the answer is not in the material goods. And I think a lot of people are realizing that. I think it comes to play like when you do have your needs met, you can start to think mentally about, and maybe there's something I don't know. Maybe you can reach this point at any time. I haven't had experience with it, so I can't speak to it. But I do think that no matter what position you're in, you can tell your thoughts to quit, to quiet.
Or accept them. I don't know. It's a delicate balance of like, do we accept? Because if you say stop, what I've been doing the past few days, I'm like, before actually a week ago, I kept being like, oh, why am I thinking these thoughts? And it's like,
yeah, I don't mean it like that. I don't think we should ever be mean to ourselves. I think more of recognizing when you need a compassionate, are you okay? Stop. Or if it's like, oh, right, you're going down this cycle again. You don't need to do this. Just stop thinking. Yeah, I never intend for it to be from an angry place, because that's not going to do any good. I don't think that will calm the thoughts or help them go away. I think it's the whole idea of, you get more bees with honey. Like same thing applies to yourself and your thoughts. Kind, say you don't need to think these things, but don't deprive yourself of saying, stop it. I'm not going to think about it. Move on.
Also,
so thanks for clarifying.
Yeah, I also think, but it's also like when we remember that our thoughts create our reality, like when you're stuck in this vicious cycle of always clinging to your thoughts, these negative thoughts of thinking, my life is so bad, my life is so bad. I've had so many periods in my life where it's like, I'm like so frustrated with how my life is going that it just gets worse. And it gets worse and it gets worse. And it's like, why is all this happening to me? And then what I've realized now is like, no, you're just creating that by perpetually getting stuck in this thought cycle that is leading to all these events to happen without even realizing it. So I think that's one of the huge importance of getting out of these thought loops, or recognizing when you're in them, or recognizing that the thoughts aren't true, because we don't even realize it, but this negativity that we're putting out to the world, I think, this projection of our thoughts to think that life is so bad will then self-fulfilling prophecy manifest into your life actually being, oh, I think I'm a loser. Well, I'm not going to do that thing, and that's going to lead to that, and I will actually be stuck here. You're never stuck, but you get the gist of just not trying to say like, oh, don't ever say a curse word because energy will come and your whole like vibe will not be aligned, or your bad. I don't think it's like that. I think it's more so your thoughts become a reality because your whole reality is your mind. That is the only thing that creates your own reality, is your mind. So if your mind creates literally your entire experience in this world, it is so important to maintain that. In the same way we're going to eat healthy, we have to constantly be maintaining our mind. That's input, that's meditating, that's going for a walk, that's journaling, or that's just recognizing that, hey, I feel freaking shitty right now, and I'm not going to cling to it. I'm just going to accept it, or sit with it, or let myself cry, or do the thing. I will say, what if you were to have said like a week ago, oh, I feel really shitty. I want to take a day to just cry and listen to sad music instead of when's the couch coming? When's the couch coming? When's the couch coming? Like, I think there are things we can do to not avoid the fact that we feel shitty. And in hindsight, do you think you've been avoiding it at all? Like the reality of your real feelings? The depth of that?
Great, you're turning it back to this.
Oh, here we go. Just how we close out the episode.
Oh, thought we were in a good place. I don't even think I've been aware enough, I think is the thing. I think I've been so caught up in my thoughts that didn't even run past me. Like I didn't have the awareness to even think that was an option. I think that's just the simple answer. I don't think it's deep. I think it's just you can get so caught up in your thoughts that you lose any sort of awareness looking outside, being on the outside looking in towards your thoughts. I think it's as simple as that.
I guess before we close out the episode, do you have any reflection points since when we started? Like, 'cause I could see you go through like the whole thing, the whole little trip.
Front row.
Front row seat.
Tickets. Oh.
Front row seat.
Oh,
to the anxiety spiral. Get your ticket
Oh
today.
God.
Hey, we all go through them, and I think if it could help, think about everyone goes through this in different capacities.
No. You asked me, so give me my time.
Okay, I'm working on that.
Yeah. So, final thoughts for me would be, I'm still feeling uncomfortable as hell right now. I'm feeling extremely uncomfortable, but who am I to say that I shouldn't be feeling this way? You know? So I think allowing yourself to sit with the discomfort versus projecting it onto when the fuck is my couch coming, you know? We're cursing a lot in this episode. But I think that's maybe what was happening was I was, instead of sitting with my discomfort, I was projecting it onto external things, like focusing on, oh, like that little shelf needs it needs a little bin, right? Like hyper fixating on measuring it.
I've never seen Daisy clean more in my life in the past 2 weeks.
I think that, I think when we don't want to sit with our uncomfortable feelings, we project them outwardly. I even noticed it with earlier, like you had put the rug back, and you see it so mad about this. The little like rubber that keeps the thing from sliding it was like all over the place. And I was like so angry by it, but I'm like, who am I to project these feelings I'm feeling onto her about this? So what I'm going back to what I was saying.
I did see you go back and fix it though.
I did fix it. I didn't say anything to you.
I laughed. I saw you do it.
Didn't say a word to you. Wasn't mad at you. I just wanted to fix it. Anyway, going back to what I was saying, I think that if you are being hyper obsessed with, in my case, cleaning or finishing a room, all excuses aside, or eating perfectly, whatever it is, I think whenever we have a hyper fixation, we're projecting a feeling onto something outside of us that we should allow ourselves to be sitting with, and is uncomfortable. It's not fun, but it does help to have candid conversations about it, where you'll notice I'm open right now. I'm outwardly expressing that this is an annoying conversation for me to Sophie, but I'm not projecting the discomfort that I'm experiencing onto her as a way for me to scapegoat the discomfort.
Which would just be another thing you're trying to control. That I just realized that the cleaning, it's all trying to control. Like It's really fascinating, honestly. Like, it's just, we will do everything to get a sense of control. That's what it's just been for you. So thank you for being open, because it would have been a really shitty episode if you weren't.
Yeah. So I guess I would just say, like, it's okay to feel uncomfortable, because it means that you're actually allowing yourself to feel feelings versus putting it off. And as long as you're putting it off, you're not going to feel good either anyway.
And even if you know your thoughts are illogical, talk them through. Like, I think that is another huge takeaway. Just talk it through.
I also think there's a difference. Like, you asked me if I wanted to talk before we recorded this episode, and a part of me knew, like, no, because it's just going to feed into my thoughts more. So I think there's different ways to have a conversation. And I think the podcast, to be quite honest, is very helpful, because there is a level of, I don't want to say professionalism, but a level of maturity that I have to maintain, because it's a podcast episode. So I think being able to say, I'm going to have a mature conversation about this. I'm going to help myself and have a conversation that's helpful to myself. That's not going to further feed into how I'm feeling. I think that's really important.
Right. Do I want to help myself, or do I want to stay in this? I think sometimes the question is, do I want to stay in this state, or am I willing to move forward?
Or do I want to fix my own problem, or do I want to make it someone else's problem and make them fix it?
Right.
They will never fix it.
Right. Do I want to project it on my partner or my friend, or do I want to acknowledge it's just all mine?
Which, trust me, it's a nice looking option, but it's not going to feel good. It's not going to feel good in 2 hours when you get in a fight because of it.
You're still avoiding. Well, I think I would be curious, if you're a listener, can you write to us, DM us, or email us? Did you resonate at all with Daisy's thought process going through her spiral, which I think has now led to some level of clarity and relief? I think that's always the goal, right? So yeah, I think I think if there's any reason to keep listening to this podcast, is to watch this journey of us figuring it out, all the feelings that come up, all the fears that come up, because I can guarantee you'll hear from Daisy at some point where she's talking to camera being like, face your freaking fears. It's going to be uncomfortable, but you got to go through the discomfort to get what you want.
Yeah, that makes me cringe less, because I'm more connected at this point. It doesn't mean I'm feeling really great about things, but it means that I'm feeling things. And I think there's a difference. I think that there is the medium. It doesn't have to be just a highlight reel, or it doesn't just have to be like a depression bedroom where you can't clean. There's a medium where you can work with yourself. And I think that's kind of a good place to ask yourself right now. A good thing to ask yourself right now. Are you working with yourself? And trust me, it can be uncomfortable to work with yourself. But are you working with yourself? Or are you working against yourself?
Or are you projecting it out to everyone you know in your entire environment and cleaning incessantly? I don't know. There's two options. Anyway. All right. Well, we're going to go to Whole Foods to make our meals for the week, because we've been buying out a lot of food, and a basic need actually is food. So we will go and get that. Bad joke. Didn't land. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. I think that this podcast means a lot to us, because it is a forum to talk about the thoughts and emotions that we all experience. And if it's anything, it's a reminder to you that you're not alone in what you're feeling, and that if you're like us and you're pursuing your dream and you are taking your risk, remember, it is all worth it. It might not seem like it right now, but you are making so much progress from getting to the place you are right now. So remind yourself of that. We believe in you. If you have any questions, you know where to find us, DM us.
And if you're here and you like this episode, go and follow us, please, because
right now.
Yeah, right now. I see our followers going up ever so slightly with each episode that I do this. So be so grateful if you please go follow it. If you do want to listen to this podcast on a weekly basis.
Our followers are going up, but before we record, you're like, no one listens to this podcast.
Okay. On that note, thanks for being here. And don't forget to follow our social media as well, because we have some nice visual videos of us talking. I don't know. My face might not be great from this episode.
Oh, man. Not a YouTube one.
But for some sheer entertainment. With that being said, we thank you for being here. We want to engage more. So again, write into us. We're going to put a poll for this episode. Reply to that. And we'll continue to hopefully answer more of your questions as we get more questions from you all. So thanks for being here, and we're headed out.
See y'all.